Hello there, it's Juliana Michaels and welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing a flip through of a junk journal I made using my Metamorphosis digital paper crafting collection. This one has a single signature, a hardcover, and a fabric spine, and I built it using a method I learned from Natasha over at Treasure Books. Her video, Easiest Junk Journal Ever, walks through the full build in a lot more detail than I'm covering here. So I'll link that below if you want to make one for yourself. I used papers and ephemera from Metamorphosis throughout, both for the cover and the pages inside, and I'll walk you through each spread and talk about how it came together as we go. Now let's get into it. Here is a look at the junk journal I created, and as I mentioned, I am not going to be going through how I made this junk journal, but I will have all of the supplies listed in the description box below. So if there's something that you're specifically interested in, you can check that out. I will also have photos of all of the pages over on my blog, and there'll be a link to that as well. And yeah, so basically this is just going to be a flip through, but I will talk through some of the steps and share with you some information on how I created the cover and inside of the junk journal. So let's get into it. To create the cover and the signature that I made for inside this, I followed a fantastic tutorial by Natasha at Treasure Books over on YouTube, and I will have her channel and the video that I used linked in the description box so that you can check them out. But if you love junk journaling and have not come across her channel, I highly recommend checking it out. She has so many great videos on how to construct junk journals in different ways, using different materials, just so many fantastic videos over there that I really can't recommend it more. I did do a couple things slightly different, and I'll kind of talk you through those here. But basically the cover, spine, and how the inside was constructed, I followed all of her tutorial for that. Now my album is a little bit smaller than hers. She basically did like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper folded in half and went from there as far as her sizing. I cut mine down, and the interior pages are 11 by 6 inches tall. So folded in half, they're 5.5 by 6. And then I just followed kind of her instructions as far as how to size my cover and the spine to create this one. And the other thing that I did different is I added a bit of ribbon here around the cover just to help hold it closed, because I know once I start adding embellishments and things and decorating my junk journals, I tend to get them pretty big and bulky. So I did add this string before I adhered the cover embellishment here. I just wrapped a piece of ribbon around it, and then you can attach your whatever you want to decorate your cover with, and then just make it long enough to wrap around, and then you can just tie it, and then that'll hold the junk journal closed nicely, because otherwise it does kind of pop open a little bit, which may or may not bother you depending on how you're going to store it. But I always like to add the ribbon. I just like the look of that. Now, of course, all throughout the journal, I'm using my Metamorphosis collection for a lot of the embellishments and, of course, the papers. And so you'll see those throughout. And on pretty much all of those, I inked the edges with some Distress ink and Vintage Photo, and used a blending brush and just did that to kind of give everything a little bit more of an aged vintage effect. And the fabric here on the spine is a piece of fabric from Seth Apter, and I just had that in my stash, and I just thought it kind of went nicely with the paper collection here. And then this ribbon, again, just some ribbon from my stash, so unfortunately I'm not really sure where to get something like this, but you know, you really just want to find something that you have or or if you need to buy something, that'll just go with whatever you're going to be working with. So yeah, so let's just kind of start flipping through here. Like I said, I completely followed her instructions for the construction of the book, and I'm going to open this all the way up to the center of the book here, and I used I think it's called a pamphlet stitch, but basically you do the stitching through the spine. But Natasha shares several different ways that you can adhere your signatures together to create the pages for your book. Now I just did one signature, and I took 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of my pattern paper, and then in between those I used some coffee dye paper that I had, and I just cut that to size, and then layered those papers alternating. So I had one of my pattern papers, and then one of the tea dye or coffee dyed papers, and then another pattern paper, and so on until I had all of them. So for a total, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of paper, plus then the cover part that she talks about. And yeah, so let's just kind of flip through. Of course, I could totally have decorated this page, but I didn't. I just kind of opened it up and started going. And again, just, you know, using some of my pattern papers. So this one here, like I did some tearing and distressing on the edges, a little bit of some stencil work here with some Tim Holtz stencils. And then I also added from my stash some die cutting and pre-die cut things I had. So I had these little green flower die cuts in my stash that I had just pre-cut at some point and never used them. So I glued those on. And then I also have a little bin here that I keep black craft stock die cuts in. And so I just kind of dug through here and you know, for like the butterfly and the frame here and this little filed part. And then I use a Ranger sanding disc, which is just a piece of fine grit paper attached to a blending tool brush handle. And then you can just rub over that paper and it reveals the craft core underneath it and kind of gives you that super cool vintage distressed look. So you'll see little pieces of that throughout here as well. And there's different die cuts, like this big butterfly. I just kind of had a piece of that and stuck it behind there. I made a little pocket and tucked a couple pieces of ephemera into the pocket. And this is a pocket die from scrapbook.com. So I know this is from Tim Holtz. This is from Tim Holtz. This is Tim Holtz. This frame, I think, is Elizabeth Craft Designs, but I don't know if it's available anymore. And then this is a Tim Holtz die set too. So lots of Tim Holtz, but that's because I've always loved his stuff. So I'd have lots of it and really enjoyed adding some of it here and there. On this page, again, just added some pattern paper here, another bit of some ephemera from the Metamorphosis collection and some stencil work. Again, just using some vintage photo through this stencil. Another one of the frames, and then this picture and this one here are from the Tim Holtz photo booth, I believe. And this die here is a die from Katie Petite. So had that and just kind of stuck that in there with my paper. But when I'm doing this, I try to kind of not do the same thing and put everything in the center of the pages, but I still tend to get kind of bulky in the center of my pages. So as I go along, like here, I didn't do much embellishing at all on this page, just kind of kept it pretty simple and just stuck one little bit of ephemera here in the corner. But it's really, as far as the process goes, for me, the process is the relaxing part, but it's also super time consuming. And for me to try to record me creating each one of these pages, the video would just get so long. And I And it also kind of blocks my creativity, to be honest, to have to record and talk about what I'm doing when in this kind of a process here. So like I said, there will be photos if you're wanting to kind of get more close-up looks at kind of how I've done the clustering to get ideas for doing it yourself. You can head over to my blog. That'll be in the description box, and so you can kind of see them a little bit closer and in more detail that way. Again, some stencil work here, and then just inking the different die cuts, and another one of the Tim Holtz portrait. I'm not sure what these are called. I can't remember exactly, but again, have that all linked up for you. And another piece of the coffee die with some stencil work on this one, and just some fun layering on a tag that I die cut from some of the Metamorphosis paper, and then I just layered on a bunch of different ephemera pieces there. And just another page with some more Tim Holtz die cutting and pulling stuff from my little bin of the black craft stock. And here I used a piece of pattern paper and I just adhered along the edge here, and then that gives me a little pocket that I can put things in. Then I did some stencil work here and added some stamps here with just some black archival ink just to give that a little interest. And just kind of played. Sometimes I left the background plain like I did here, these kind of minimal embellishments on these two pages, but you know, you can kind of do as little or as much as you like when you're doing this sort of thing. On this page, this little film strip die is another Katy Petite die set. And then again, just various layers with the embellishments and ephemera from the Metamorphosis collection. There's a little string there. Again, more die cuts, some of the little greenery, layering with the different ephemera pieces. And you might notice like on some of the pages here, I went with like a little bit of a color theme. So here I did the purple and green, and then, you know, here I kind of stuck with the embellishments being a little bit more orange and purple, and here, you know, more purple and green. So you can kind of see how I did that through. And then this one here, like I did more of the teal and the orange. So you can just kind of gives you ways to mix and match the different pieces as you're playing with them. Here, this is another Katy Petite die that I used and kind of made a little slide. I just took one of the tiny butterflies from the collection and fussy cut that, and then put a piece of acetate inside the die, and then fold it in half and put the butterfly inside there, and then just adhere that all together. And this background piece is just is a scrapbook.com label die that I thought was really pretty and perfect for kind of being a nice base for creating a little cluster of things. And this is just a little scrap. I used this piece, that's fine. This one here. Oh, maybe I haven't gotten to that one yet. I think it's back here a little bit farther maybe. But that's a little scrap. So if you trim off something like here where I had these pieces overhanging, hang on to those scraps. You never know where they might be, you know, something that you could tuck in somewhere else and use. So, and if you know, here, sometimes you need things a little bit longer, like this ticket, I cut it in half so that I could have a little bit more sticking out on the top and bottom. So there's always lots of fun ways to stretch things and make them go a little farther. Here again, just layering some of the ephemera pieces. And here another bit of stencil work and another one of the black craft stock pieces die cut and sanded, another one here. These are both from Katy Petite. And then again, just layering and inking things and just having fun playing around with clusters. And like here, you can kind of see that rusty orange color coming through is the main focal point. And a little more here. This I just feel like if I probably like dug through. This would be another neat one that you could turn into a pocket. You know, just put a little adhesive there and you could stick some tickets and things in there. I think it would be kind of fun to, see what I got here. I've used up a lot of what I had printed already, so I don't have a lot left to play with. But you know, like you could even just stick some little tickets down in there. That would be kind of a fun way to fill up a little pocket there. And then, oh yeah, here, see, this is the one I was showing you earlier where I cut off part of that tag. It's there, and then it was this piece here. And then again, another layered bit with some black craft stock behind it, and this die is from Pink Fresh Studio, I believe. So it's like a kind of a stamp die. And that is a look at the finished album. So kind of flip it around here a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the construction in the top here. But you can see that's kind of a little bit of a gap. She goes over all the details on how to do this, and I found them very easy to follow. So even if you don't make this smaller size, you want to make a larger one and just follow along with her instructions exactly. I actually did that for my first one that I made, just kind of playing around with the idea. Here's the original one I made, and I ripped off I'd put the cover element on here and then decided I wanted to do it differently, because originally I had done the 8.5 by 11 sheets and then just folded them in half and made my signatures that way with the pattern paper and coffee dyed paper, and then did the binding where you can just wrap your pages with the embellishment or with the thread or string or whatever you use, and then you can kind of take them in and out. But yeah, the other thing I did differently too that I wanted to mention is I actually created the inside signature part, so that's the pages, and then I embellished all of them. And after I did that, that's when I added my cover. And again, I was just trying to see if I could get myself a little bit more kind of wiggle room in the spine so that it might lay closed a little bit better. But it's not going to lay completely flat once you start adding all this stuff in here. At least not with this type of construction. So I do know there are other ways that you can create your spine to allow for that bulk, and you know, but there's so many different ways to make junk journals. So this is just one. And again, I like adding the ribbon on to wrap around and use that to kind of help hold it closed. So I'm happy overall with how it turned out. And that's the whole journal. I hope flipping through it with me gave you some ideas for your own projects, whether you're using Metamorphosis or just love this vintage butterfly and botanical style. If you want to make a journal like this one yourself, definitely check out Natasha's video. I'll have that link in the description, along with a link to Metamorphosis if you'd like to grab it, and to the other supplies I used. I'll also have close-up photos of all of the pages over on my blog if you want to see more detail. Thanks so much for flipping through this one with me today. And until next time, stay crafty, my friend.